I never knew when my hell truly began, because at first everything seemed perfect, like a story built too beautifully to be real. I met him when I was 21, and he was already a respected businessman with money, influence, and a kind of certainty that made you believe nothing bad could ever happen to you beside him. He chose me out of many others and told me I was different, that I was his piece, that I was the woman who would bear his children and build him a real family. At the beginning, he protected me, isolated me from everyone, saying the world was dangerous and that only he knew what was best for me. I didn't realize when love turned into control and control into fear. After our first child, things changed, but not suddenly, rather slowly, like poison entering your blood without you noticing. He began disappearing for nights, then days, then weeks. When he returned, he was no longer the same man. He told me for the first time that he needed other women, that it was in his nature, that I had to understand and accept it if I wanted to stay. I believed it was just a phase, that it would pass, that if I were good enough, he would stop. But he never did. Over time, his mistresses were no longer just a story I wasn't allowed to question. He brought them into our home. At first, there was just one, then another, then another. He told me this was our new reality and that if I couldn't accept it, I was insane. In the house where I thought I was raising my children safely, other women began living as well. Women who knew about me and looked at me like I was an old piece of furniture. We had 5 children together and 3 more from other women, all under the same roof, and in a chaos he called a family. I tried to leave more than once, but every attempt ended the same. He found me, he brought me back, and then the punishment began. It wasn't just physical, although that existed too, it was more psychological. He kept telling me I couldn't survive without him, that I had nowhere to go, that no one would believe me. And he was right, because in front of the world, he was a perfect man, respected, generous, an exemplary father. The first time he sent me to a psychiatric hospital, I didn't understand what was happening. He told me I was exhausted, that I needed help. But when I got there, he had already told everyone that I was unstable, that I had episodes of paranoia, that I invented things. I tried to tell the truth, but every word I said was interpreted as proof that I was sick. I was kept there for days, sedated, cut off from my children, cut off from reality. When I came out, I was even weaker, and that was exactly what he wanted. He did this more than once. Every time I tried to resist, every time I said I couldn't take it anymore, I became unstable. Psychiatry had become his perfect weapon. He didn't need to hit me anymore. It was enough to declare me insane, and the world would do the rest. My children grew up in this reality. The older ones began to understand, to see, to feel. But they were afraid too, because they knew he could do anything, that he had money, connections, and power. Sometimes I would see the way they looked at me, and I didn't know if they saw their mother or a woman who had failed to save them. I started writing everything down in secret. At night, when everyone was asleep or when he wasn't home, I wrote every detail, every word, every threat, not because I believed someone would save me, but because I felt that one day I would disappear. And if that happened, I wanted someone to know the truth. I don't know when I started to fear for my life, but I know the fear never left me again. There was no peace in that house, only heavy silence and tension. Every door slammed too hard. Every step in the hallway made me flinch. If you are reading this, it means something has happened, because I was not allowed to say anything. I was not allowed to exist outside of his control. If I am no longer here, it is not because I was weak. It is because I was kept in a world where truth was considered illness. and freedom was punished. There were moments when I almost believed he was right, that maybe something really was wrong with me, because when everyone around you repeats the same thing, you begin to doubt your own mind. The women in that house started speaking like him too, telling me I was weak, that I was unstable, that I should be grateful I was still there. Sometimes they looked at me with pity, other times with contempt, but they never helped me. Over time, that house became a stage where everyone played their role, and I was the only one who didn't understand the script. I remember one night in particular, because that was when I realized there was no turning back. One of the children, not mine, was crying in the next room, and I instinctively went to comfort him. I picked him up, and for a few seconds there was silence. Then he entered the room. He didn't shout, he didn't raise his voice, but his gaze was colder than anything I had ever felt. He calmly told me that it was not my child, and that I had no right to touch what did not belong to me. In that moment, I understood that even my role as a mother no longer fully belonged to me. After that night, I began to disappear. I only spoke when I was spoken to. I no longer reacted. I no longer tried to change anything. It was the only way to avoid punishment. But inside, something still resisted. A small part of me refused to accept that this would be my life forever. I started hiding things, not just my writing. I hid small pieces of evidence, fragments of the reality he was trying to erase, messages, recordings, anything that could prove I was not insane. I hid them in places I knew he would never search. It was risky, but it was the only way I felt I still had some control. The second time he sent me to the psychiatric hospital was worse, because this time I knew exactly what was coming. I knew that every word I would say would be used against me. So I stayed silent for days. The doctors noted that I was withdrawn, that I refused to communicate, that I showed severe symptoms, exactly what he needed. When he took me out of there, he told me that if I ever tried to step out of my role again, he would not bring me back. Sometimes I thought about my children and wondered if they would be better off without me, if my absence would bring them peace. But then I would see them come close to me when he wasn't home, how they searched for my eyes, how they needed me, even in silence. And then I knew I had to stay. Even if I couldn't change everything, maybe I could still save something within them. I began to notice details I had once ignored. The way he controlled everything, every conversation, every movement. Nothing was random. It was a system, a world built by him, where every person had a clear role, and anyone who tried to step outside that role was either removed or destroyed. One day, one of the women disappeared. She was simply gone. No one spoke about it. When I asked, I was told she had left. But the way they avoided the subject, that heavy silence, told me something else. From that moment, my fear became more real than ever. I started preparing for the possibility that I wouldn't have time. I organized my writings, placed them in multiple locations, hoping at least one would be found. It was no longer just about me, it was about the truth, about everything he had hidden behind his perfect image. If you are reading these words, it means I did not manage to escape, or maybe I tried and paid the price. I don't know what version of the story reached you. Maybe they will say I was unstable, that I had problems, that everything was just in my head. But you need to know that it is not true. The truth is much simpler and much more painful. I was a woman who believed in love, who believed she could build a family, and who, without realizing it, entered a life she could no longer leave. And if there is one thing I want to remain after me, it is this: do not ignore the signs. Do not doubt yourself when you feel that something is wrong, because sometimes the greatest danger is not what you see, but what you are convinced does not exist. There is one last thing I need to say, something I was always too afraid to admit, even to myself. I stayed longer than I should have, not because I didn't see the truth, but because I was slowly taught to fear life without him more than life with him. That is how control works. It doesn't chain your body first. It chains your mind. He didn't just take my freedom. He rewrote my reality. He made me question every instinct, every memory, every feeling. There were days when I would look in the mirror and not recognize the woman staring back at me. Not because I had changed, but because I had been erased piece by piece. Sometimes he would be kind, and those moments were the most dangerous because they gave me hope. Just enough hope to stay, just enough illusion to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could go back to how they were, but they never did. And deep down, I think I always knew that. I often wondered if anyone would notice if I disappeared. Not the version of me he showed to the world, but the real me. The one who cried in silence, the one who wrote these words, the one who was slowly fading inside a house full of people. If you are listening to this, I want you to understand something clearly. Abuse is not always loud. It is not always visible. Sometimes it is quiet, calculated, hidden behind smiles, money, and reputation. Sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one everyone else admires. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if I will find a way out or if this story will end here. But I know this. My voice exists now. My truth exists now. And even if I disappear, this will remain, and maybe that is enough.